Torah tells us, V'achalta v'savata uveirachta, and after one eats, does a ma'isa achila, the act of eating, v'savata, and they're satisfied, then they have a biblical mandate uveirachta. They have a biblical mandate of benching. And we know this is one of the few biblical commandments we have. I should say we have many biblical commandments. One of the few biblical brachas we have. 95%, maybe higher, of blessings are all rabbinical in nature. The brachas we make before we drink coffee, before we put on our talis and tefillin, the general Birkas Shavach Velda. Most of the brachas are all rabbinical in nature. Birkas Hamazon is probably one of the only clear-cut biblical blessings, and even that isn't always clear that when you are benching, it's fulfilling a mitzvah in Torah. It has to be with the certain criteria. There is benching midrabanan. Biblically speaking, as the Torah tells us, you need v'achalta v'savata. You have to eat and be satisfied. If one eats, I don't mean satisfied, let's say 21st century standards, you're not happy with the wings, or you're not happy with the fries or in crispy. I mean, let's say you don't eat a certain amount, like you eat a kazayas, so rabbinically speaking, one is obligated to bench. But biblically speaking, you need v'achalta v'savata v'eirachta. There are only a couple of other biblical blessings that are potentially biblical. Those are up for discussion. But one of the famous disputes is between the Rambam and the Ramban. And again, always within the Rambam, it's not always 100% clear what his sheet is. But the simple way to understand the Rambam and the Ramban is clear. Based on the pasuk, Hishem Hashem Ekra Hava Godelo Okenu, that when you call out God's name, i.e. when you want to, because the Ramban writes in his Hakdama, in his introduction to Chumash, that really the Torah is really God's names. If we could figure out the code, we could see all these God's names throughout the Torah. So when you call out God's name, i.e. when you study the Torah, Hava Godel Okenu, you have an obligation to make a Birkas HaTorah. And perhaps, according to the Ramban, it's clear it's a bracha min HaTorah, and the Rambam, though, it seems to be it's only a mitzvah midrabanan. So according to the Ramban, we have another bracha which is a mitzvah min HaTorah, Birkas HaTorah. And in fact, some want to point out what is in the Kudus HaMachlokas, what is the issue on whether you say Birkas HaTorah is a mitzvah min HaTorah or a mitzvah midrabanan. Let me just point out, when I talk about Birkas HaTorah, let's be clear. I don't mean Monday, Thursday, Shabbos morning, Shabbos mincha, and Yontif, when you get called up for an aliyah and you make a Birkas HaTorah. That definitely is a Birkas HaTorah, but that's not what we're talking about now. That's known as commonly as an aliyah, but that's clearly a rabbinical mitzvah. The biblical bracha we're talking, hopefully everyone here has already made this bracha already, because usually before you start learning, one has to make this the Birkas HaTorah and the Birkas HaShachar. That's the Birkas HaTorah. But so what's in the Kudus HaMachlokas? So some want to say, what is the nature of Birkas HaTorah? What kind of bracha is it? What do you mean, what kind of bracha? A bracha is a bracha. No, there are different categories of brachas. There's what we call the classical Birkas HaMitzvah, a bracha we make before we do a mitzvah, like talis tefillin, that's a Birkas HaMitzvah. A Birkas Shevach V'Hoda, a bracha of praise and thanksgiving, that's the second category. And the third category is a Birkas Hanenin, a bracha you make before you eat food. So within the categories of Birkas Hanenin, even though we'll get into it at a later date, the simple understanding is Birkas Hanenin is only a rabbinical mitzvah. So a Birkas HaMitzvah, which is usually the bracha we make, is also standard a bracha midrabanan. Among the Birkas Shevach V'Hoda, there's more of a discussion. In fact, the Ramban, probably one of his sources is the Gemara in brachas basically almost equates Birkas HaTorah and Birkas Hamazon. So he learns it as a literal translation, a literal comparison, and therefore the Ramban seems to say that, because what type of bracha is Birkas Hamazon? It's clearly a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah. It's a bracha thanking God, you gave me food, I ate, and I'm satisfied. So the Ramban learns maybe as an extension that so too Birkas HaTorah is a bracha praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and hence the two brachas which are min HaTorah are both Birkas Shevach V'Hodah. Could be the Rambam, or even if you don't say it's the Rambam Shita, other Rishonim, it's only D'Rabbanan, and they learn it's a classical Birkas HaMitzvah. In fact, that's a major machlokes among the Rishonim Achronim, with different practical differences. In fact, there's a famous discussion about nashim, women. Are women obligated in Birkas HaTorah? A woman obligated in the blessing, because why? Because we learn in strictly speaking, the obligation of Talmud Torah per se is only on men, not women. Of course, women have many obligations to study. This from a pure practical point of view. If you want to keep a kosher home, you want to keep Shabbos, you have to know it. So there is a aspect of more practical Talmud Torah, but in terms of the pure, unadulterated Torah Lishma, that applies to men. So there's a discussion whether women are chayiv in Birkas HaTorah. So it's based on the Ramban. So the Ramban writes, it's a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah. It's clearly a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah. In other words, basically we paskin they are chayiv in Birkas HaTorah. It's a discussion why. So according to the Ramban, it's clear because the bracha on Birkas HaTorah is a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah. Thank God we received the Torah at Har Sinai, and therefore obviously women received the Torah at Har Sinai also. If it's only a bracha on the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, so then you could argue also it's only D'Rabbanan, and then you have to get into why a woman making the Birkas. Then the answer is why women make a Birkas Torah as well. But other nafkaminas would be, let's say, do you have to learn right away or not? If it's a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah, okay, so what I'll learn later, or maybe I don't have to learn at all. If I'm just praising God, and I didn't say anything about me learning. I'm praying God, you're the greatest. You gave the Jewish people the Torah. But if it's a Birkas HaMitzvah, then you have to learn miyad. Just like when we put on our talis, we make the bracha, and then we need what the Gemara calls over lasiyason. The general rule is you first do the bracha, and then you do the mitzvah. So you need over lasiyason. But there's something called over the over. You can't do it too far. I can't say, okay, let me make the bracha on the talis now, and about 20 minutes I'll put the talis on. That's not accepted. There has to be some type of connection between the actual bracha and the mitzvah. That's two. So therefore, regarding Talmud Torah as well. So that's why our minig is, right after we make the Birkas HaTorah, we say different psukim. Yevarecha Hashem Yishvarecha, and the different Birkas Kohanim, different psukim we read. We try to cover Torah and Nevi'im, and throughout the davening we cover. Some say Ava Rabbi is the Birkas HaTorah, and therefore you go right into Shema, which is also Torah. So our meaning is that we assume that you learn right away, but that's part of the issue. If it's a Birkas HaMitzvah, then you have to learn right away. If it's a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah, you still have a mitzvah Talmud Torah to learn, period, but doesn't necessarily have to happen right after. That's part of the discussion. And we'll see that's a separate topic, Birkas HaTorah, many differences in terms of whether it's a Birkas Shevach V'Hodah or the Birkas HaMitzvah. So getting back to Birkas Hamazon, so according to the Ramban anyway, we have two biblical brachas, which are in our Torah. We have the bracha of Birkas Hamazon, which is everyone agrees to, and according to the Ramban anyway, we have the bracha of Birkas HaTorah. There's a discussion also independently of an issue of Havdalah. Havdalah we make on Motzai Shabbos. What is the status of Havdalah? Again, by Havdalah, everyone agrees Havdalah ala kos. The Havdalah we make over a cup of wine, that's clearly rabbinical. That's why the Ramban's opinion last week is there was no Havdalah. Since you can't make Havdalah over a cup of wine, it was Tisha B'Av, So therefore, we skip Havdalah that year. I mean, but the Ramban's agreement, you had to make Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol to actually make the Havdalah. So, according to the Rambam's opinion, Havdalah is a mitzvah min Torah. He learns it out from the mitzvah of Kiddush that we just read this past week. Zachar Yom HaShabbos Lo Kadsho, to remember the Shabbos day and sanctify it. So the Rambam writes, so basically it's bookends. The Rambam says there's a mitzvah to say words of praise about Shabbos. Bechnisaso uv'yitziaso, in its entrance and in its exit. So the Rambam writes, so how do you do that? With Kiddush you bring it in, and Havdalah you bring it out. So it's bookends. So therefore he points out that Havdalah, so according to the Rambam, you could have Havdalah as Daraisa. So that again is a point of contention, but for our purposes, we assume Birkas Hamazon is Daraisa as well as Birkas HaTorah. Even within Birkas Hamazon, how much of Birkas Hamazon is min HaTorah? So we pointed out before, you have to eat a certain amount, v'yachalta v'savata, to be chayev in Birkas Hamazon min HaTorah, but how much of benching is biblical? So that's what the Gemara tells us in Brachas later on, that there are 4 blessings for the Birkas Hamazon. One is, the first one, Hazon HaSakol, instituted by Moshe Rabbeinu all those years in the Midbar, sustaining us with the food, with the man. The second blessing from Yehoshua is the bracha on Eretz Yisrael, thanking God for giving us the land of Israel. Then we have the third bracha, Boneh Barachamav Yerushalayim, David and Shlomo, thanking God on the temple. And the fourth blessing, that's only a rabbinical. In fact, that's what we explained in the Gemara at the end of the Tainis regarding Tu B'Av. On Tu B'Av, they instituted Hatov HaMeitiv. That's what the fourth bracha is called. Hatov, because the bodies during the ill-fated Bar Kokhba revolt, many Jews were killed, and they weren't permitted burial, and the bodies were lying open for a long period. So after finally they got permission and were able to do the burial, so the miracle was Hatov, the bodies did not decay, the Hameitiv, that they were able to be buried. So, and that happened on Tu B'Av. That's one of the reasons for the celebration of Tu B'Av. But that's only a rabbinic bracha. So the first 3 brachas are biblical. The fourth bracha is rabbinical. So even if you hold Birkas Hamazon as min HaTorah, which we do, you have to eat a certain amount of food to be chayiv min HaTorah, v'yachalta v'tzavata, and only the first. And that the Gemara talks about ma'naf gamina. And in fact, how do we know? How do we demonstrate that the fourth bracha is different than the first 3? Because if the first 3 is a mitzvah min HaTorah, and the fourth bracha is rabbinical, we try to make a distinction between, to show when we're fulfilling a mitzvah min HaTorah and a mitzvah midrabanan. That's why we do something very strange. We do a lot of things very strange, but one of the things regarding benching is Boneh Barachamav Yerushalayim Amen. So usually when I make a bracha, I don't answer Amen. Someone else answers Amen to my bracha. By the third blessing, we end off with Amen. And that's what the Rishonim point out, is because that's a conclusion of a unit. Ad kan biblical mitzvah benching, now we're moving into the rabbinical mitzvah. That's what the minig of the Svardim, by Sfiras HaOmer, they have a not Nusach Svar, but the real Svardim, they say La'omer in between counting days and counting weeks. They say this is the 10th day of, this is the 10th day of the Omer, which is a week and 3 days. So they break, so Rav Tzvi Pesach Fang writes, the reason why they break up La'omer days and weeks is because they follow the opinion of Rabbeinu Yerucham that counting days today is biblical, counting weeks is rabbinical, and to break up the biblical and rabbinical, so that's what we do by benching. So they point out, that's how we make the clear, that's what the Gemara says in Brachas. It talks about someone who's working, and in terms of what are you allowed to, how much time you're allowed to take off of benching. So the Gemara makes distinctions, perhaps between the first 3 brachas and the fourth one, in terms of that, and therefore, so that's Birkas Hamazon. So the question the Meshach Chochmei asks is, how come then, if we have very few brachas min HaTorah, Birkas Hamazon and Birkas Torah maybe have Havdalah. Let's assume it's the two of them. Yeah, it's very strange. When do we make Birkas Hamazon? We make Birkas Hamazon after we finished, after we eat. And Birkas HaTorah, when do we make? Birkas HaTorah we make before we learn. So how come, if you have 50 rabbinical brachas, 20, 100, whatever it may be, so I understand over the course of many blessings, it's, so it's possible some will come out to make the bracha before, some you come out to make the bracha after, some you make in the middle. If you have so many things, it's never, but here you only have two biblical blessings. Can't you think the Torah can get its act together? Either, I don't care, I'm just looking for consistency. Either make them both before, make them both after. But why is it Birkas? Why is one beforehand, and why is one afterwards? That's the kasha, the Meshach Chochmah. The Sefer Achinuch also goes into that kasha in terms of, in terms of why before, why after. So we don't have time to give the answer today. Let's just summarize, and maybe we'll continue this tomorrow. So we discussed the obligation of Birkas Hamazon based on this week's parsha Eika V'chalta v'savato v'rafta. It's a biblical mitzvah to bench, and we pointed out it's one of the few Birkas HaTorah, few brachas that have been HaTorah. Birkas HaTorah is Machokas, the Rambam and the Ramban. And then we got into the question, what type of bracha? Birkas Hamazon is clearly a Birkas Shebach V'hodah, and Birkas HaTorah, that could be part of the issue. If it's a Birkas HaMitzvah, so then it's only D'Rabbanan. You hold, it's a Birkas Shebach V'hodah, it's a bracha bin HaTorah. The different brachas we have, Moshe Rabbeinu, Yoshua, David, and Shlomo, and in Yavneh. And in terms of how much you have to, how much you have to eat, and then we'll have to get into as well as what happens, the shaila of let's say a ger, someone who converted, but before he converted, they had a full meal. And now it's a full meal. That's full meal meaning a halachic meal with bread and challah. And now, 10 minutes later, they became Jewish. Are they obligated in Birkas Hamazon? Similarly, a question would be a katan shehigdio, a katan that became a gadol. Similar question, and a similar question about an avel who had a meal when he was an onin, when he's exempt. So maybe we'll go into some of the issues regarding Birkas Hamazon tomorrow. So to continue our discussion on Birkas Hamazon, on benching, we discussed yesterday that Birkas Hamazon is a mitzvah in Torah, v'yachalta, v'savato, v'rachta, and within Birkas Hamazon, the first three brachas are biblical. Of course, benching itself is min Torah, and however, the nusach, the text, perhaps that might be midrabanan, like the Rambam Shita regarding tefillah. That tefillah, the concept's biblical, but perhaps the actual saying of what we have today, that might be a later institution, or Anshe Knesset Agadola. So we point out the first three brachas are min Torah, Moshe with the man, Yoshua with Eretz Yisrael, and David and Shlomo with Binyan Beis HaMikdash, and the fourth bracha, because what they were Misakim B'Yavna and Harugei Beitar, that's Midrabana, and that's why we say Bona Merachama B'Shlayim Amen. As well, so we left off with Shaila among the Achronim. The Chazon Ish raises the question, Rabbi Akiva Eger. The question is, let's say a Gershen is Gayer, someone who became a convert, but the day, forget about the day, an hour before his conversion, he wanted to have his last meal, he wanted to have a Suda, and he ate a big Suda, had plenty of bread, challah, and now he finishes off the conversion process. There's the Milah, the Tefillah, the Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and now he becomes a full-fledged Jew. So the question is now, he just had a full meal, let's call it a half an hour ago. Really, technically speaking, there's a 72-minute time span where one has to bench, but that's only if all you had was a piece of bread and you're no longer hungry. But if you have only a full meal, so it could go a lot longer than 72 minutes. So therefore, but we'll just keep it simple that it was within the 72 minutes. It was a half an hour ago. He just finished a full meal, and now he became a Jew. So the question is, the Chazon Ish raised, is he obligated in benching now? Or do I say, since he ate the meal while he was a non-Jew, a non-Jew is not obligated in Birkas Hamazon the way we know it. So the question is he obligated in benching? So the Chazon Ish clears the following Chakira. He says it depends what's the issue in terms of why is someone obligated and why is someone exempt. In other words, why do you have to have the meal to a certain proximity to the benching? Is it because as long as you bench within that time that you're satisfied, or the 72 minutes, so therefore you are being satisfied your meal is being mitzdaref to the act of eating. In other words, the eating is still like when we do mitzvahs, so we like to make a bracha right before the mitzvah. But here we want to bench right after the act of eating because it's really the achila that's mechayev. But as long as you're satisfied, so we still consider like the eating is still happening or just happening. Or do I say it's not the achila, but it's the being satisfied? In other words, because the Torah tells us two words, v'achalta v'savata. We need a ma'isa achila, and we need an act of being satisfied. So, of course, we need both, but the question one, which is the ikr? Which is the major koveya? And then the other one is, we also need, but it's more incidental. So, the Chazon Ish, right, if the issue is, you need a ma'isa achila to be chayiv in benching, so then this convert would be pater, because when he ate his meal, he was pater from all mitzvahs. He wasn't even Jewish yet. So it's the ma'isa achila which is the key that requires one is mechayev one to bench. So a convert would be exempt. However, if it's the savat, if it's being satisfied, so when he wakes up Jewish for half an hour later, and he's satisfied from the meal, if the savat is the key, so then a non-Jew, a ger, would be obligated in benching. So that's the chakira he clears regarding Birkas. But he seems to lean towards the fact that it's the ma'isa achila, and if that's the case, then the non-Jew would not be obligated in benching. Another similar case, the Rabbi Akiva Eger discusses. Rabbi Akiva Eger discusses a similar case is a katan shehigdio, that a bar mitzvah boy that becomes a gadol. So let's say a katan had a big meal, a major suda, right? And then after he finished his meal, whatever, either the case was, it became nighttime, he became 13, if we go by ace or ace, or maybe he reached puberty, he got to sorrows, whatever the definition of becoming a gadol is, it happened, is he ate the meal beforehand, and now when he ate the meal, he was only a katan, and now he's a gadol. So the shaila is he chayev in Birkas Hamazon? So Rabbi Akiva Eger raises the same issue, the same chakira. In other words, is it the ma'isa achila which is the key, or is it being satisfied? Because one could argue similarly, a katan is exempt from all mitzvahs, so therefore there was no ma'isa achila, because the act of that gets into a separate chakira is how do we view an act of a katan. If you assume an act of a katan isn't a ma'isa because he's exempt, so then perhaps he'd be exempt. But if we go with the results, that right now I'm 13, I am satisfied from a meal I just had, so then I would be chayav. So Rabbi Akiva Eger clears the same shaila. Could be, of course, become a chalak between a katan and a ger as well. A ger, everyone agrees, a ger is clear cut. You're exempt when you're a guy. However, by a katan isn't so clear cut. A katan, either on one hand I could argue I'm exempt because I'm not 13. On the other hand, maybe the ma'isa, we have other examples where a ma'isa of a katan could count for later on, we'll get to in a minute. Or a third, similar shaila the Achronim discusses an onain, someone before the burial. So let's say someone, loved one passed away, and it's in between, it's after the death of the person, but before the burial. So a person has the status of aninus, of being an onain. So the halacha is, the Mishnah tells us in the beginning of the third parak in Brachas, Mishameso mutu lefanov, that one who is in that time period is exempt from mitzvahs. So the question is, to Machlokas Rashi and Tosas, what do you mean they're exempt? So Rashi writes exempt. That why? Because since a person can't concentrate there, they have their mind on the burial, on making the funeral plans. Therefore, they can't concentrate in Kriya Shema and other mitzvahs, so they're exempt. And Tosfos quotes from the Yerushalmi that no, that's not the reason. That's kavod ames, honor to the dead. Lo'eg l'rush. It's not appropriate that someone who's chayav in mitzvahs, you're doing mitzvahs in front of someone who's exempt. That's why we don't wear our tzitzis out on a cemetery. It's kind of like mocking the dead, so to speak. So that's the machlokas Rashi and Tosas in the beginning of the third parak in Brachas, on the status of an onein. So an onein is clearly pater min mitzvahs. We pass not only pater, but he's usher to do mitzvahs. And then once he becomes an avel, after the stimas hagolel, after the kfura, after the burial, so an avel becomes chayiv a mitzvah. So one exception to the rule is the mitzvah of tefillin. An avel yom rishon, that's a further discussion whether the burial and the death have to be on the same day or not. But whatever the details are, an avel yom rishon, an avel on the first day is exempt from tefillin because tefillin represents pe'er glory, and an avel is the opposite. They're in a state of, not in a state of pe'er. So therefore, an onein is pater min mitzvahs, an avel becomes chayav. So the question is, in this specific case, the question is, let's say an onein had, the question is, what does an onein do if he wants to eat? And if he wants to eat bread, so we don't say, well, you can't eat, because if an onein is pater min mitzvahs, but can he do negative commandments? Can he go to McDonald's and have a meal? Can he have his Big Mac? So no, an onein is exempt from positive mitzvahs, but he cannot do negative commandments. So the question is, so what does he do about washing his hands for bread? On one hand, there's a rabbinical mitzvah midrabanan, you have to wash your hands before you eat bread. On the other hand, there's an issur d'Rabbanan to eat bread without washing your hands. So is an onein stuck? So what does he do? So the Piskei Tshuva quotes from the Achronim that he should wash his hands without a bracha. So it's a compromise then. He washes his hands. Well, what does that do? Why if you're going to wash your hands, wash them with a bracha. And if you're not going to make a bracha, don't wash your hands at all. Why wash your hands without a bracha? That's what the poskim write is, anytime you do something to avoid an aveira, you don't make a bracha. You only make a bracha when you're involved in a kiyam ha-mitzvah. So if you're doing washing your hands to avoid the kiyam ha-mitzvah if you're washing your hands to avoid the issur d'Rabbanan, so there's no bracha. So onein goes ahead and does the mitzvah, but he doesn't do the mitzvah because of the mitzvah. He does the mitzvah to avoid the aveira. And there are other examples. So an onein had a full meal. He washed without a bracha. He had his bread, and now so obviously he come benching. Well, I'm exempt from mitzvahs. In fact, it's also for me to do mitzvahs, so he doesn't bench. And then let's say he comes back from the kfur, he either had a graveside. It was nice and quick, and he got back, let's say, within 72 minutes, or he had a nice full meal. He's still satisfied 2 hours later. Should the first thing the onein do, or should he go back and bench or not? So that's what the Achronim. So some Achronim say it's compared to the shaila of the katan, and it's compared to the case of the ger. However, that's the question. That's what it depends on. The question is on whether an onein is pater min ha-mitzvahs. The question is, how do we view an onein? An onein that is man ha-mitzvah. So let's say there's this time period between the burial, from the time of the death to the burial, where onein is exempt from mitzvahs. He becomes chayav after the burial. So the question is, how do we view that time period of an onein? Is it pshat that he's chayav in mitzvahs, except that there's an exemption because he has to be osek with kfur, he has to be involved in the burial? Do we view him basically as someone who's chayav in mitzvahs, except it's a special exemption? Or does an onein, is it viewed in a total state of exemption? I am totally pater from all, I don't even have a chiyav. That's the famous machlokes the Rush and the Maram Rumberg have regarding an onin by Havdalah. Let's say you're onin Saturday night. Let's say someone died over Shabbos and the burial Sunday morning. So an onin is clearly put from Havdalah Saturday night. In fact, he's also to make Havdalah. It's a discussion whether you can hear someone else's Havdalah. So what about when he comes back from the funeral? Whether it's Sunday morning, Sunday morning might be less of a shiloh because maybe you might assume it's the whole day's the chiyuv. But if you assume the chiyuv is Saturday night or the burial wasn't until Monday, so there's an onin make Havdalah. So that's a machlokas to Rush and the Maram and Rumberg, whether an onin is chayav. What's the issue at hand? What's in the kudat machlokas? Whether an onin after the burial has to go back and make Havdalah? To the different ways of learning it, but many learning that's the issue in terms of what's the pshat that an onin doesn't make Havdalah Motzai Shabbos? It's the fact that he's totally exempt from all. There is no mitzvah, and if there is no mitzvah, so tashlumin to make up a mitzvah only makes sense if I'm chayiv in a mitzvah. So if I miss shacharitz, I got to daven mincha twice. But if I'm not chayiv, if a ger, no one says a convert has to make up for 20 years that he didn't daven. He wasn't chayiv until he became a Jew. So how do I view the status of aninas? Is it a total exemption? Or no, I'm chayiv in mitzvahs except for technical reasons. I'm osik b'kfura. So that's how many achronim learn the machlokas, the Rush and the Maram Rumor. It's a similar machlokas by a katan, not the same issue, but the Rush and the Maram Rumor gemoe katan. A katan who became a gadol during Shoshim. He actually was, while he was during Shiva, he was a katan, so he actually sat Avelis. But now he became a gadol. The shaila is he chayiv now in Avelis because Binat Torah he didn't do anything. So again, it's a similar machlokas, the Rush and the Maram Rumberg, whether he has to do Shiva, afterwards or not. Again, so the question: how do we view the status of a katan? Mitzvah is totally exempt, or is it that he's chayiv, but it's a technical exemption? So those are the three shilas which are similar. Not necessarily the same answer. Depends how you view the situation. But the question of a ger who became Jewish and he just had a full meal and he's still satisfied from the meal, do I say he has a chiyuv in benching? Is the mechayev of benching the achalta of the savata? Do we view the chiyuv of benching? The main thing is the achila, and you also need to be satisfied, but that's just a stipulation. That's just a tanai you need in the mitzvah. Or no, the ikar is that as long as you're satisfied. So that would be the issue: a ger who converts, or similarly a katan shehigdil, a katan who becomes a bar mitzvah during he ate a full meal beforehand, and as well the last case of an onin who becomes bar mitzvah, an onin who had havdalah, or in our case birkas hamazon, would it be chayiv in the mitzvah? And so it's more of an issue in all those cases how you view anytime you have a long zman chiyuv, how do you view that zman chiyuv? In other words, by havdalah it's a separate issue because within havdalah is the chiyuv havdalah. Everyone agrees the chiyuv havdalah is Saturday night. There's a further discussion: is it just Saturday night, or what about the whole day Sunday? I mean, everyone agrees you can make up havdalah until either Sunday, Shkia, or Tuesday. We passed on Tuesday. But so, how do we view that time period on Sunday? Because Rabbi Akiva Eiger writes, Hayom holech achar halayla. The day follows the night, and therefore perhaps you chayev the whole. Maybe Sunday's not a tashlumin. So if that's the case, then everyone should agree then that an onin, when he comes back, if he has the burial on Sunday, would have to make havdalah because that's not in a state of exemption. And that was the issue we had this year on Tisha B'av, Motzai Tisha B'av. So how do you view? We don't make havdalah Saturday night. We're not going to make havdalah. We don't make havdalah until Sunday night. So the question is, how do we view that time period? Misha lo hivdil b'motzai Shabbos. That's the machlokas, the Ramban and the Bahag. The Ramban holds your putter. There is no havdalah. End of discussion. The Bahag says you make havdalah Sunday night. What's the nakudas machlokas? The Ramban holds you're exempt. If you're exempt, there's no havdalah. There is no chiyuv havdalah that week, and therefore there's nothing to make up. The Bahag holds you chayiv, except I can't make havdalah because it's Tisha B'av, so I still have the same chiyuv. And that's the nafkamina is someone who's a Someone who, let's say your wife has to eat on Tisha B'Av, or someone has to eat. Could someone who's fasting on Tisha B'Av, could they make Havdalah for someone who's eating? In other words, so that's according to the Ramban, no, you can't make Havdalah for your wife because she's chayiv to eat. She has to make Havdalah, and you don't have a chayiv of Havdalah, so you can't make Havdalah for your wife or for any cholah. Or if I say like the Bahag, then you can, because I'm fundamentally chayiv in Havdalah. It's just a technical issue. I can't drink the wine, so therefore that would be, so that would be an issue. So that's the general issue. Anytime you have a long zman chiyuv, it goes, let's say, Sunday to Tuesday. How do you view that time period? Is there a basic time where I'm chayiv and the rest is tashlumin, or they say the whole zman chiyuv? That's I'm considered that the whole time I'm chayiv, and therefore I become a gadol or a bar mitzvah, or an oni, and I become chayiv in the mitzvah. So continuing our series on Birkas Hamazon, so the Torah tells us v'yachalta v'savato v'rachta, that there's a Torah obligation to recite Birkas Hamazon when you have an achil and a tzvi, and it's a Gemara in Brachas, a Gemara, I think Memchetz, Memtes, as well as a Gemara in Brachas Navchaf, a Machlokas Harishonim in terms of what is the biblical obligation. At what point are you obligated in benching? So there's a Machlokas Rishonim, Tosas against the Rashba. So Tosas works with the way we've been assuming, that it depends on, there's a Machlokas in the Gemara whether you just need a Kazayas or a Kabeya. We paskin that you need a Kabeya, you have to have enough to fill you up. And if you don't have that, you're not chayav min Torah in benching. And there's a Rashba that says no. All you have is to eat if you eat a kazayis of bread, you're chayav in benching. However, as long as you drink something as well. So the Rashba introduces the concept if you eat a kazayis of bread plus drinking, that makes you chayav min Torah in benching. So that's a machlokas rishonim. We generally assume, like the first way, that a Kedei Sevilla obligates you in benching. However, we don't reject the Rashba straight out. I think the post can bring down that we do reject the Rashba, that in terms of we have a choice between someone who only ate Kedei Sevilla versus someone who ate a Kazayit and drink. We assume the one who ate the Kedei Sevilla should lead the benching, because we assume he's chayav in benching min Torah, the other one is only midrabanan. However, all things being equal, let's say one person only ate, let's say they ate the same amount, and one person ate and drank, so the one who ate and drank, you should give him to, let's say, lead zimun, because at least according to the Rashba, al tzchumra, you're covering all your bases. But so that's a discussion, how much you have to be chayav in Birkas Hamazon or not. And obviously the obvious nafkamin is always to be a suffix. Someone who's a suffix Birkas Hamazon, someone who's not sure if you benched, do you have to go back and repeat the benching? So that could depend on how much you ate. If you're chayav in benching min Torah, then suffix daraisa or chumra, you have to go back and repeat benching. But if I only ate a kazayis, so that would be enough. If I ate a kazayis but drank, so according to the Rashba, I'd be chayav to bench over. So that's a discussion in the poskim in terms of how much you have to eat to be chayav. Mentioning, we assume in order to be chayav in Torah, you need a kedei sevilla. There's an interesting discussion. I think the Sitz Eliezer discusses other poskim. Let's say a person ate a kazayis, let's say he drank or not, and he benched. He benched midrabanan because he ate a kazayis, and then a little later he ate another kazayis or ate a half a kazayis. Now he became full. So he's full also because he ate because of the kazayis he ate before. That's the reason why he's full. You're not full. A couple of wings aren't going to fill you up. If you had 3 dozen wings first and then you had a couple wings later, so obviously he's full because of the bread he had earlier. So now do I say, so the benching he did before was only midrabanan. Now do I say
Does he have to bench minat Torah now, even though he only ate, let's say, a kazayas of bread now? Because do I say, but the other kazayas of bread that he ate is mitzdaref that he had a share daraisa. So that's a discussion, interesting discussion among the poskim. Some say yes, but the Mishnah Brewer raises the issue. I think that Tzitz Eliezer writes yes, but I don't think that's a consent. I think the Chazon Ish is cholek, and that to me that seems to be the pashtus is that once you bench, so even though you're benching midrabana, but that breaks the siruf anymore. Anything you eat afterwards, that you can't say it's mitzdaref anymore. So it's a machlokes among the poskim, but I think the minig is not to. You wouldn't be chayav to bench again minat Torah, and that gets into the question we discussed yesterday, in terms of a katan who's full while he's a katan, and then he wakes up and he's a gadol, or the case of onen, that could be relevant to that discussion. So regarding the chiyuv minat Torah, so we said benching is minat Torah. So there's a question in the Gemara Brachas discusses in Daf Chav Amid Beis regarding the obligation of nashim, a woman obligated in Birkas Hamazon minat Torah. Everybody agrees women are chayav to bench. The question is, are women chayav in benching minat Torah or midrabanan? In fact, that's the Gemara where the Gemara over there in Brachas talks about the nashim. It talks about women are chayav in kiddush, nashim chayavetz bekiddush dvar Torah, and the Gemara asks ayat mitzvah aseisha zman grama. So why should they be chayav? So the Gemara says because yeshnu b'shmira or yeshnu b'zechira. Whatever's included in shmira Shabbos is included in zechira. So whatever's included in the negative is included in the positive as well. And that's the Gemara over there. Then the Gemara goes on after to discuss a woman chayav in Birkas Hamazon minat Torah. So Rashi wants to know what's the shaila? Like why wouldn't they be? The Torah says v'achalta, v'savata, uveirachta, and Rashi writes the havele mitzvah aseisha ina zman grama. So bishrom by kiddush, the Gemara says nashim achayev in kiddush yom minat Torah. Then you ask why? It's a zman grama, but benching isn't a zman grama. So usually we make a distinction by negative commandments. Generally speaking, women and men are equal in terms that this negatives apply equally to both. The only distinction we generally make between women and men is on a mitzvah aseisha zman grama. So Rashi's bothered, like why? What's the issue? Why wouldn't women be chayav minat Torah and benching? It's a clear biblical imperative. V'achalta v'savato v'rachta. So why does the Gemara and Brachas have a discussion on it? And in fact, my nafkamina, the nafkamina is whether women can bench for a man. La fuke yidei chavasan. If women are chayav minat Torah and benching, then in theory a woman can bench for a man. If a woman are only chayav midrabanan and benching, then she can't bench for a man. That's the nafkamina. But what's the issue? So it seems to be a major machlokas Rashi and Tosas on why. Again, the Gemara is not clear. The Gemara doesn't say they're not. The Gemara leaves it as sveika dedina. The Gemara is not sure whether a woman is chayav minat Torah midrabanan. But alibit, if you hold a chayav minat Torah, there's nothing to talk about. That's the pashtus. V'yachalta v'savato v'rachta. The burden of proof is on you. If you hold the opinion in the Gemara that says the women are only chayav midrabanan and benching, what prevents them from being chayav minat Torah and benching? That's going to be the machlokas Rishon. The machlokas Rashi and Tosas is within the sheet in the Gemara that says the Rabbanan. Why? They're not arguing in the Gemara. So Rashi says as follows. So Tosas quotes it as well. So I'll just read from Tosas. But Perish HaKunteris the Sal Kedaita Telo Mechayve Midaraisa Mishum Diksiv Our Aretz Hatova Asher Nasan, we say in the second bracha, we thank God on the Eretz Tova, Eretz Chamda Tova, in the great land of Eretz Yisrael that God gave to us. And Rashi writes, "V'nashem lo natlu chelak ba'aretz. And we know women don't get a chelak in the aretz. I know you're asking. We just had Tisha B'Av, and we mentioned that one of the celebrations on Tu B'Av is that on this day they permitted intermarriage among the tribes, and the issue was because when Beno Tzlafchad inherited the possessions, they didn't want to mess up the Chelak Haaretz, so they didn't permit women to marry out of their tribe. So you know you're asking Beno Tzlafchad got a Chelak, but as Rashi says, but it was Chelak Aviyam, that wasn't their own Chelak, they got the Chelak of the father. So Rashi writes, the reason why perhaps women are not chayiv min Torah and benching is because al eretz haTorah shenasam. How could they say the land that they gave us is they don't have a chayok in the land? That's what Rashi says why women are only perhaps chayiv midrabanan in benching. Tosas is not like that. Why is Tosas not like that? Because he says if that's true, if your taina is the chalukas haaretz, then let's not get personal, but me and you have a problem. Me and you, I'm a Levi, you're a Kohen. Sheva Levi has a problem because Sheva Levi doesn't have a Chelak Ba'aretz either. And if that's according to you, then we shouldn't be chayav to bench Min Torah either. Because how could we say al Aretz HaTova? And in fact, we know, and in fact, there are shittas that say we don't paskin like them. I think it could be Rav Shlomo Vilna, Benjamin Shlomo. Some of the Achronim bring down. Some have a minority view. Say a Levi and a Kohen should not lead benching, and the opposite of our minhag of the Kiddush still, which we actually give the Kohen to lead benching. But there are those who say based on this taina, you're right. If you're going to based on Tos's taina, you're right. We can't say al eretz chemda, and therefore we should not lead the benching. But if you take it to the logical extreme, we'll have to come back and how will Rashi answer the taina on Tosas in a minute. But let me give you what Tosas says first. So Tosas says, so therefore Tosas rejects Rashi. Let me just answer Rashi before we move on to Tosas. So what would Rashi answer to that taina? Rashi didn't know that the Kohanim and Leviim didn't have a Chelak Ba'aretz. So that's the whole discussion that you learn in Mishnah later on when it talks about Vidoy Ma'isa, it talks about a ger. What could a ger do? Because in the Vidoy you're saying al aretz that you gave to my forefathers. So it's a discussion over there. So one opinion is that you bring it without saying it, but the other sheet is no. But so it talks about the Kohen and Levi. So we get the Arei Migrash. We get the 48 cities that people, that's where the Kohanim and Leviim live, and that's also some of the places discussed where the people could go for the Arei Miklat. But we do have a portion of the Arei Migrash. So obviously Rashi will learn that's of enough. Us having the Arei Migrash is enough for us to say in benching al eretz chemda. So obviously Tosfos holds that's not enough. Tosfos that might not be enough. But that's a machlokas over there in the Mishnah. But that's how Rashi would answer the question. Tosfos says, okay, it's nothing to do with chalukas haaretz because what about Sheva Levi? So Tosfos says a totally different reason. You know why women are in chayiv and benching min Torah? Because what do we say in benching? Al britzcha shachasamta b'vsareno, v'al tarascha shalantano, misha lo'omar britz v'torah. That we mentioned bris and Torah, and therefore women don't have a bris. We're talking about, bris milah, even though there is a movement today about a brita or something. I'm not familiar with it, what they actually do, but I heard, that we're in a society where whatever men do, women have to do also, and there's something called a brita, where you give a bris to a woman, and I think there's something like that in Africa also, where they have some equivalent. But either way, so whatever that means, I'm not sure. But it says that in benching we mentioned bris and also milah. So therefore, Tosfos says, you know why women are in chayim in Torah and benching? Because because they can't say bris v'torah. They do say it, but then that's not chayev to them min Torah. And therefore, since bris and Torah isn't shaykh to them, therefore they're only chayev midrabanan. Why our minig is they do say it. So therefore they say, it's not a problem because, it's not something, they're excluded from, that bris obviously they can't have, and Torah is, strictly speaking, and only that strictly speaking, the Chi of Talmud Torah is on men, and not women. Women get to learn a certain chelak, a certain portion, but they're not learning, they're not chayiv in Talmud Torah per se. So either way, Tosfos writes that the reason why women are exempt from benching min Torah is because they don't have bris v'Torah. And so therefore, it's a machlokas Rashi and Tosfos. What's the pshat in the Gemara and Brachas? Why are women exempt from bris and Torah? Why are women exempt from benching min Torah? According to Rashi, because they're lacking in the chalukas haaretz, and according to Tosfos, it's nothing to do with chalukas haaretz. It has to do with they're lacking in bris v'Torah, and therefore they're only chayev midrabanan in benching. That's the pshat in the Gemara. Why women are only according to the shita in the Gemara that says women are only chayev midrabanan in benching. That's why. It's because they can't say either about brischa shachasamta b'sarenu, al torah shachashamantanu, or they can't say al eretz chamdatov, al eretz hatova shenasam. So so since it's a sveik at the dina, so therefore the minig is obviously women don't bench for men, because since it's unclear whether women are chayav min Torah in benching or not, because in general we have a rule that since the Gemara doesn't answer the question, so on a dinda raisa, so perhaps if a man only was chayav in benching midrabanan, so then there's more room for a woman to be able to bench for, because unless you get into the old trade rabbanan, whatever women are only chayav midrabanan, but maybe if a woman ate kedei sevilla, that's a whole sugya anyway later on in brachas about whether that's the way we assume, but whether a chi of d'Rabbanan can be mostly a chi of d'Oraisa. We'll get to that. That's a separate topic in its own right. But to summarize, we discussed the issue of how much, what does one have to do to be chayav in benching. We assume halacha kedei sevilla, but the Rashba sheet is no, even a kazayis plus a drink. So we don't reject the Rashba straight out. We assume it's best if one does drink. So therefore, if you drink, according to everybody, you chayav in benching. Therefore, you get a plus in terms of leading the zimun. And then we discussed the issue in the Gemara Brachas Daf Chaf Amud Beis in terms of whether the issue in terms of why should women, it's a lav zman grama, why should it even be on the table? Of course, women should be chayav min Torah. No, so according to Rashi, the issue of chalukas haaretz, Tosfos says, what about Sheva Levi? So Rashi apparently holds it's enough that we have the Ari Migrash, that's enough to say in the benching al Aretz Hatova that we do have enough of a chelak ba'aretz. And Tosfos says no, it's nothing to do with chalukas haaretz, it has to do with bris v'Torah, and therefore, as we'll get into the Gemara later on, that Mishalo Amru bris v'Torah, Yina Yotze, so we'll have to continue, maybe we'll continue tomorrow, because you got to go now. We'll discuss the minig of Rav Chaim Volozhin, or they claim that Rav Chaim Volozhin never sang the Zemiras on Shabbos, Suar Mishalo Achalnu. So we'll see how that ties into the topic of benching and why he didn't say it, and is that a minig we follow today, not follow today, etc. So the Torah tells us v'achalta v'savata uveirachta, and when a person has an obligation, and when a person eats, and when he becomes satisfied, he becomes biblically obligated in Birkas Hamazon. In fact, it's a discussion in the Gemara and Brachas on Daf Mem Tes, At what point is there a biblical obligation? There's a machlokas. One opinion is, and the way we assume, is as long as you need an achila, that's why the Torah has two words, achila, v'yachalta v'savata, that's the definition. You need to have an achila which leads to a severe. You have to have enough food, i.e. bread, to make you full. And that's normally assumed like a kabeya, the size of like an egg, the volume of an egg. And the other opinion, I think it might be Rav Meir, says that no, v'yachalta v'savata, when is the biblical obligation? You need an eating and you need a drinking. But you only have to eat a kazayas. But if you eat a kazayas plus you have a drink, that obligates you biblically in benching. Interesting, so we passed, as I mentioned, like the former, that you only have to have eating and not drinking, but yet we don't reject it totally, that in a situation where all things being equal, which they aren't usually, but they could be, the one leading the benching, the one doing the zimun, let's say if one ate a kazayas and had a drink versus the one who ate a kadei sevilla, so the one who ate the kadei sevilla should lead the benching because he's biblically obligated. But let's say they both ate a kadei sevilla and one drank and one didn't, so the one who drank in addition to eating should lead the benching in deference to the other opinion. We assume in general it's ve'achalta v'savata. Interesting, the Gemara on Daf Brachas, Daf Chaf Amid Beis, talks about many things. It talks about woman's obligation in Kiddush and Birkas Hamazon, and then it talks about the greatness of Klal Yisrael, that how the Jewish people do more than they have to. That what do you mean the Jews do more than they have to? The machmir al atzmam, they take on extra. Because even though biblically speaking we're only obligated to bench if we have a volume of an egg, a beya, yet we know even if we only have an olive size, even if we only eat a kazayas, we go ahead and bench also, although we only bench rabbinically speaking, but we still bench. So therefore God, because we go extra, so God treats us favorably. That's the example the Gemara gives, that God treats us favorably because we even, instead of just benching when we're full, we bench even when we're not full. So the Vilna Gaon asks, and others say, like, the many examples we can find in Shas and the Talmud where we did more than we have to. So why specifically, why was benching picked out as the prototype? You know what, God loves Klal Yisrael and gives us special treatment? Because, you know what, when it comes to benching, we even bench on a kazayas, not a kabeya. I'm sure we could go through the Talmud, give lists. The Gemara's classic example in Nida, in the laws of ritual purity, the women take upon themselves many stringencies, and hence if the women take them on, they apply to the men as well. So we find many times where they're strict. So why does the Gemara here single out benching? So the Vilna Gaon in Mishlei has a very interesting explanation, and other Achronim as well. So he quotes from a Zohar that basically we'll keep the calculations, we'll just assume the calculations are correct. We're not going to get into the details. But basically, 10 kizesim, 10 slices of an olive equal a kadei sevilla. If you eat 10 of those olive-sized things, that's considered a full meal. You know, the Zohar writes, that'll be... So the Gemara, so the Gemara talks about, let's say someone has 10 kizesim. So 10 kizesim, you have many choices, but one choice, you could eat all 10 kizesim. You hope you're hungry if you do that. Or you could eat one kazayas yourself and then go look for poor people, look for the aniyim, the vulnerable people who need food, and share the 9 kizesim with them. So what are the pros and cons of each? Well, the pros of eating all 10 kizesim by yourself is, then I'll be biblically obligated in benching, because in order to be biblically obligated in benching, you have to eat a kadei sevilla. And 10 kizesim equal kadei sevilla. So I'll say to myself, well, I want to be machmir, I'll be strict, I'll eat all 10 kizesim, and therefore I can fulfill my biblical mitzvah of benching. On the other hand, the advantage of not eating 10 is you won't get sick. Now, the advantage of not eating 10 kezesim is 9 other people, you're helping feed a meal. For a poor person, a kezayis is a lot of food. So the Gra explains that's the greatness of Birkas Hamazon, that we know the Rambam talks about the golden path, the middle road. All extremes are bad. And we know, as we read last week in the Aseret Hadibros, we have the 2 categories of mitzvahs. The first category of mitzvahs ben adam u'makom, commandments between man and God, and the second category of mitzvahs ben adam u'chavero. And we know the ultimate observant Jew. We know some people care about only keeping Shabbos; they don't care about stealing or adultery, and other people care about not committing adultery and stealing. They don't care about Shabbos and kosher. The ultimate Jew is the one who takes both sides of the tablet seriously and observes both commandments between man and God and man and man. That's what the Vilna Gaon says here. The greatness of Birkas Hamazon here is the fact that you're able to put together both commandments ben adam l'makom and l'chavero, because on one hand you could go ahead and you eat your kezayis, but you're missing out. So you're benching. That's your ben adam l'makom. But now, how do I make it also ben adam l'chavero? I make it ben adam l'chavero by sharing with the other person. Not only that, and how do I know God's happy with me? Because now I even get to bench in front of 10. I can invoke God's name. So the greatness of Birkas Hamazon is showing the balance between mitzvahs ben adam l'makom and mitzvahs ben adam l'chavero, sharing the 9 kezesim.
The number 10 is critical because then you could give one to each of a minyan, and you would have a minyan.
Absolutely. You could still say Elokeno. That's why, you could say you have the minyan, and you could add the word, and therefore you see God's very happy with you.
Right.
And in fact, that's what the famous Meshach Chachma, when he talks about where Yerushalayim came from, where is the word? So it comes from 2 different words, Yireh and Shalem. Talks about Avram, Malkitek, different people naming the city, and we combine both of them. But Yireh stands for Yireh Shamayim, fear of heaven, and Shalem, Shalom, peace. The ultimate of Yerushalayim, and when Yerushalayim is going to be bevinyano, when Yerushalayim is going to be standing, i.e., with the Beis Hamikdash, that's going to be when we combine both mitzvahs ben adam l'makom and ben adam l'chavero, because we see different times. On one hand, what was the cause of the destruction of the temple? The big 3: not to worship idols, not to commit illicit relations. On the other hand, we say sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred, brought on the destruction of the temple. So therefore, we see, when is it going to be Yerushalayim? When is Yerushalayim going to be? When you have both aspects. When you have a Yireh from Yireh Shamayim, people who fear heaven, i.e., they keep commandments between man and God, and when there's shalom, between people, and that's what the benching, that's what the Vilna Gaon others point out. The reason why Birkas Hamazon is singled out as an example of why God shows favor to the Jewish people. They could have picked many other examples, but this is one that shows both commandments ben adam l'makom, and that could be another pshat. Just to conclude, there's a discussion in the Gemara about what is the most important verse in the Torah. So one opinion is Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad. That's one. Another one is Ve'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, and the third one is one that most people never heard of. It's a Keves Echad Taseh Baboker. It talks about bringing the carbon every day in the temple. So I understand. So whether we agree at this, everyone is saying, okay, accepting God as your God, that we understand why that's critical. So I understand that opinion. I understand V'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, but what does bringing a carbon every day have to do? And it's important, but to say it's the most important thing in the Torah, so that's just someone explain along these lines. That Shema Yisrael represents commandments between man and God. You're accepting the yoke of heaven. And Rabbi and V'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, that's ben ama chavero. But karbanos, they represent both, because karbanis is number one, we're bringing a carbon to God. On the other hand, also either a Kohen and the people are partaking of the carbon. So that's the ultimate.
It bridges the two.
It bridges the gap. Whenever we can bridge the gap between Ben Adam Lamakam, we make the Mishkal HaChasidis, the happy medium, and combining both Ben Adam Lamakam and Achaveo. That's the reason why God shows favor to Klal Yisrael.